You're still outside, Bridget. I'm impressed. I looked out and there are already fuzzing little bugs. And I'm like, I don't want another one of these classes when I'm looking like a fool. You got a
I have,
puppy too.
I've got 2 doggos.
Oh, you gotta show us. Hello, doggy.
Yeah, this one's Brody,
Aw,
and then he's my sister's dog. And then, can you see Winston?
a little darker. Yeah, is he like a
Yeah,
lab?
he is a hound mix. I don't know
Oh,
mixed with what. They
okay.
didn't tell me, but
Are they about the same age or?
Brody is like 10
Oh,
almost, and Winston's 4.
okay.
Yeah, so old man, and Winston still has puppy energy.
Oh, yeah. Ours is 5 and very much still. I mean, she's an Australian Shepherd. I think her whole life is defined as puppy energy. I think that's the kids have talked about wanting another dog, and they're like, "Can we get one that's like not wanting to run and chase a ball like all the time?" My daughter even calls it, "Can we get a lazy dog? You know, the dogs that just lay and they're like part carpet." Well, that does sound kind of nice
My
too.
little my little boy, my little dog, who's upstairs trying to beg for food right now. Jack Russell, tiny guy. He's 11 years old. Still acts like he's a puppy.
Are the Jack Russell Terriers the ones that like can jump straight up? Like I'm imagining like Fraser, that little dog.
Um, I'm not sure. I've never seen him jump straight up,
Okay,
but like he does have some leaps that he can do.
that's amazing. Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
there's some breeds of dogs that just have springs in their legs. It seems like they're just able to jump, especially the little, somehow the smaller dogs seem like they're able to do a bit more of that. Okay, I have added the YouTube clip. This is a very short video. I want to say it's 2 minutes. It's made to be funny, to make you think about how we construct our research and the questions our participants may have about it. So take a minute, watch it. I'm going to watch it again on my own, so I'll stop my video. Is everyone back here? Okay.
Yep.
Kind of meant to be silly, but what'd you guys think? Starting off with open-ended questions, right? What was the problem?
They weren't related at all. It was just a bunch of random questions.
Right. Just no question as to why was that. Oh, there's a puppy. Thanks, Izzy, for showing us your little pup-la-poo. Can't, you said he's 11? That doesn't seem possible. Sorry, I was saying, is he 11, you said?
Yep, 11.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, I have a cupcake that I'm eating and he wants it.
He's like, I do love you. Give it to me.
No,
Oh,
frosting.
love for left. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Thanks for
Hi.
sharing. So yeah, if you don't have a good research methodology that's laid out for your participants, they're not going to know what they're supposed to say to your questions, right? And then after that, it went into forced choice. What were those questions like?
Like deal or no deal or something like that.
Yeah. How do you pick one of those? What is it it's asking? How do you make that choice? So this is meant to be kind of funny and silly, but when you guys are picking your questions, think about it from that perspective. The person who's going to be taking this test for you, this questionnaire, what are they going to be? How are they going to read the question? Because in your head, it might make complete sense, right? Because it's feeding back into your research question. But unless there's clear instructions or it's clear to the participant, like that there's a question in there and some choice, they're not going to know how to respond. So at any rate, that was kind of the point of that, meant to be funny, har har. Not the most exciting of videos. I feel like they could have been a little bit more, a little peppier. Okay, can you guys all see this? Encouraging accurate responses, rating products. Okay. So this is another big thing, right? There is this thing very much now that people are being paid to provide certain reviews. Have you guys heard about that? Right, okay. So we want to make sure that when people are allowed to review, and we as people and consumers, we are all allowed to provide reviews. But if there's not going to be any sort of checks, then there's a problem. And if all of a sudden there's an enormous discrepancy between how rated the product is on a site like Amazon and also what Consumer Reports is saying, something that is unbiased, independently tested, right? So there's this new thing now, it's not that new, but right here has, can you guys see my cursor or do I need to go on the other screen? You can see it. This verified purchase means that the person who's reviewing it actually purchased this item, which I don't know about you, that seems like a clear requirement. Before you provide a review, you should have purchased it. And then on top of it, they provide almost a rating of the rater, that it's a top reviewer. If you guys are big readers, the website Goodreads, you can provide reviews of books as well, about more the writing of the book, plots and all of that. But they will also rate you as a reviewer, because as you're looking at the reviews, you're also asked this question right here at the bottom: helpful, not helpful, and sometimes even report abuse. There are some that make no sense. I'm sure you guys have seen those crazy Amazon reviews that have nothing to do with the product. They're just trying to be funny. Well, whatever star rating they're giving it is going to imply its overall rating. So we want to just be careful with that. Okay. Construct validity and behavioral observation. This is huge. When we make claims based on observational data, that is just us watching a social interaction or some sort of event and then gleaning some meaning from that. So for instance, if I were to observe how much people talk, so let's look at this one. So this is the estimated number of words spoken per day for female and male study participants across 6 samples. The year refers to the year when the data collection started, and the duration refers to the approximate number of days participants wore the ear, which is a way to, something that actually like listen. You can see it actually on her. It's this microphone doohickey. The weighted average weighs the respective sample group mean by sample size. So We can see here this is really small on my screen, so I'm going to go over here. Can you guys still track? Well, anyway, you can see the locations, the US, then Mexico, US again, how long it was done, the age range of the participants. At the beginning, there's also the year that it was done. And here's the estimated average number of words spoken per day, men versus women. And you can see down at the bottom, the weighted average, 16,215 versus 15,669. So this is a way that you are taking actual participants and observing their behavior. You're not necessarily in this one visually observing, you're recording data to see how much they are speaking. It's another way of doing observational measurement. You are not giving them a survey, asking them how much they think they talk or how little they think their partners talk. You are gleaning data directly from the participant and their interactions. So in this, do we think this is a better method than asking a survey? What do we think?
This one is more time consuming than anything because this is over a course of years and over the course of a couple days. If not one, it's definitely at least two. So I think this like way time consuming, and then you have to go back and like probably listen, do a word count for every single word that a person might have said throughout the day, and that can be very, very time consuming. So
Harshana, would you sign up for that job? Heck no. I'm like, how much money's on the line?
Yeah, it depends on how much they pay.
How much are you going to pay me here? Because that is mind-numbing work. Now, especially because some people speak quickly and then it's all like based on dialect, like even which region of the United States you're in, sometimes words get clumped together and it's like, what is that one word? Is that three words? What is it? And definitely the number of days, that's huge. 10 days on the fifth study, 10 days that they wore this thing. That is significant. So now if we had taken a survey and we had said, who do you believe speaks more during a random day, average day, men or women, and gotten that response, and maybe even asked how much more do you think men speak than women, women speak than men, whatever, do we think we would have gotten the same result or something similar? I guess I'm asking about bias here with surveys versus observational data. If you had asked me, I'm just going to base it on my relationship with my husband, which of the two of us speaks more on any given day, I'd be like, hands down, by like 5,000%. Not like, what is the difference here, guys? That's like 550, 600 words? No. I mean, he sits in front of a computer. His meetings are via chat on the computer. Kids are gone. I mean, right? Whereas I'm like, little. Okay. And I think oftentimes gender studies, gender views, stereotypes would probably support what I just said, that women talk a lot more than men. So that is our bias, right? So going into it, I'm going to go in with that filter in answering a survey. So the benefit of observational data is you take away the bias and you're just listening in or you're just observing the participants. Downside of that, as Tarshana pointed out, two major pitfalls: time, and then time part two, which is when you're coding. So time to actually record and observe, and then time to make sense of the data you just got. So it's a double whammy there. It is not short by any stretch. Okay, so some claims can be based on observational data. So one of the studies in your textbook that I thought was really interesting, again, I'm originally from Canada, so this speaks to me, observing hockey moms and dads and seeing their behavior. So let me read part of this. So in Canada, popular media says that parents act aggressively at youth ice hockey game. Researchers were curious about that and they wanted to see if it was true and decided to observe a sample of hockey games and recorded the frequency of both negative and positive behaviors as they saw on the ice rink. Okay, so what they found is that 64% of parents' behavior were positive and only 4% were negative. The result did not, in fact, support the reports in the popular media. Okay, so what do we think about that? Is this surprising to you? If instead of ice hockey, we inserted soccer, what do we think? Yeah.
I will say my dad was one of those who was always one of my brother's coaches. He was always the intense parent yelling. Doesn't matter what age, what sport. One brother plays soccer, one played football for a while. They both played baseball. Everyone knew who my dad was because he was the one yelling.
Would you often sit right next to him? Or
Oh
would you
no.
like- oh gosh. No.
I tried to avoid their games as much as possible
Yes.
because sport ball kind of bores me.
Right.
But I did work at the concession stand at the baseball field.
See, that's
there
the
were
right
times-
level of commitment. I'm there to support you, but far enough away and earning money at the same
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
I mean, there were times where, like, if they were playing on one of the closer fields, I was like, oh, there's Dad.
I can hear him. Okay. Yeah.
Doesn't
What were
matter
you
what
gonna say?
sport, they will yell.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I wasn't really surprised. Like, it's kind of fun to see the numbers that they came up with, but I'm not really surprised that like only 4% were negative, but that the media would cover that just because of the tendencies of media and also the fact that like negative parents do tend to be louder because they tend to be like, they're the ones screaming at the refs and at the umps and all that. So usually they're a lot louder than the parents that are being like, oh, good job, you know? So they
Right.
usually will just kind of overtake the positive parents.
Yeah. The other thing that came up for me on this is that, well, first off, it makes you question, like, where is the media getting those values or this idea, right? Probably incidents where things went way out of hand. And when things go way out of hand, is that the norm? No, right? When things are completely crazy and bananas, that's what's the definition in a way of an outlier. That is an odd, offhand, like not going to be repeated often event. What's far more frequent is parents who are going to be supportive. And even if you have a couple parents, and I've seen it with my own children, there are some parents who are like, well, they need to be learning. Where else are they going to learn their discipline by playing soccer when they are, 4? Calm down, person, right? Like, that one's still not potty trained. I think that's a pull-up I'm seeing. Why are we screaming about his dedication to offense? That's not, necessary or appropriate. But because you do see that occasionally, you do see some people who are more out there, who are more, who might be like even more boisterous, right? Then maybe that's what you walk away with. That's what taints kind of your whole image. Now, I'm also curious with this particular one, whether it was visible to the crowd, whether there's somebody observing their behavior. Do you know what I mean? Like, if somebody was in the crowd and you're like, if these are diehard parents who are there every single weekend, they would be able to identify like, who does that grown-up belong to, right? There might be some questions around that. And if they're doing proper research, they probably have like a notepad and taking notes, and probably not the stats of the game, right? So the presence of the researcher can impact an observational study. Whereas with surveys, you just pass it along. Usually you're not standing right next to them and looking over their shoulder as they're answering. It's either done online or on their own. So there's a little bit less of that impact. But anyway, something else that I was kind of curious about. Okay, let's see here. Oh, here, I don't know why that doubled up. So observations often can be a lot better than self-report. We just talked about that. Making reliable and valid observations can often be threatened by observer bias, right? So if I am biased to see a negative comment and I go and measure it, maybe that's all I'm gonna hear. So that exact thing, that observer bias, that's when you see what you expect to see. And maybe you'll even minimize the number of times you see something that opposes what your thinking should be. So when we did the qualitative study with the students last year, and we went to Starbucks, there was one of them, their hypothesis was that men were less likely to say thank you and please to the cashier than women were. That was one of his hypotheses. And so the two team members, right, were observing, and they were so, like, that was so much the filter they were looking at it. They were like, oh, there might have been more pleases, but maybe we couldn't hear them, right? Like, Starbucks can be kind of loud. So going into it, if you're thinking you're doing observational data, you really have to be very clear as to what is my bias? What is it I'm thinking will happen? And you need to have a way to safeguard against that. So in our study, our mock study as a class, obviously we didn't do any videotaping. We would have needed to get consent. That's a whole other thing, right? No time for that. But that would have been a way to verify the data, right? Or audio recording, or asking the cashier to also keep track. How many people said please, thank you, or whatever manners, right? So you have a double assessment method so that you're eliminating observer bias. Again, when you're doing quantitative studies that are made with surveys and polls and just numbers, there is less of that observer bias, right? Because the researcher does not really have a hand in the interpretation. Data is just data. Okay, so let's go with this. The observer effects, I just talked about this a little bit ago. It's when participants confirm the observer's expectation. In the example with hockey, it might have been the exact opposite. Having the researchers be present maybe tame down the audience, right? So that's the opposite. But sometimes it can do quite the reverse. Like, I expect you to do this, and now you're behaving more like this to kind of confirm what I'm thinking. So the bright and dull rats in maze. So psych undergrad students were given 5 rats, and they were told to see how long it took for the rats to learn to run the maze. Each student was given a randomly selected group of rats. Half of them were told that their rats were bred to be maze bright, meaning somehow they were bred so that all of them were really quick at figuring out a maze. And half were told that they were bred to be maze dull, meaning they really had no clue what they were doing. The rats were actually all genetically similar. So this was really more of the original researcher manipulating some of the data to see the impact of that preconceived grouping. So, but the maze bright rats ran the maze faster each day with fewer mistakes, whereas the maze dull rats did not improve their performance over several days of testing. So the study demonstrated that sometimes observers' expectation can in fact influence the behavior of those that they are observing, which is kind of phenomenal that that would even be, especially with rats. With humans, it's a little bit more doable. Clever Hans is this you might have seen before in your Psych 101 classes. It appeared that the horse knew how to do some basic math. So he could add, subtract, multiply, divide, at least as well as a 5th grader, which is pretty amazing. So he was tutored with simple math by his trainer, and he would tap his hoof every time he would count. And the trainer was not the only person who could actually get Hans to do this. This is important. It's not like it's just participant specific, like, right, it kind of overlapped elsewhere. So the researchers started to suspect that Hans was picking up on subtle nonverbal cues from the questions, so that they had one person whisper the first part of the problem in Hans' ears, and a second person whisper the second part of the math problem. Neither questioner knew the correct answer because they only knew the part of the problem they whispered. Hans could not answer these math problems at all. Yes, Hans was clever, but not about math. He was skilled at detecting subtle nonverbal cues, so changes in breathing, posture, furrowed brow. So again, that's how you can influence somebody's response. This has been shown time and time again, folks who are doing like the crystal ball reading, like there's a word for that, fortune tellers, right? Or those who say they can speak to the beyond, right? People that have passed on. And by asking questions, they're just really, really in tune with people's responses. And then they're able to guide them that way. Have you guys seen videos about that? I'm not trying to poke holes at whatever you might believe in, but that's kind of goes in line with that. It's people who are really good at subtly observing. Okay, so how do we go about preventing this observer bias and the observer effects? Both are huge. So first you need to use a code book. Before you've even started your study, you need to determine and define what it is you're going to be observing and determine in code what it's going to look like. So again, if I'm at Starbucks and I'm trying to figure out if people use good manners and whether there's a difference between male and females, I need to first of all define what is good manners. What does that look like? So please, thank you, maybe making eye contact. I think they had included in there that they couldn't have their like iPhones out or a phone out, like not looking or like being on the phone as they're placing their order. So that's how they qualified it. And every time they saw one of those behaviors, they would just do a tally mark, right? So the coding is huge. You need to make sure that you have an idea of what it is you're going to be researching and how you're going to make it fall in one category or the other. You should also consider using a masked research design so that you are taking out the option of you somehow being biased as a researcher from the equation. So one way that you can prevent that, so the mask design, is that you don't know who you're dealing with, right? So like in the rats, if you didn't know, let's say they actually were Maze Bright or Maze Doll, that you didn't know which one you got. So you were blind to whatever the participant you had. So you didn't treat them any differently. So you kind of take that part out of the equation. So as it's described, the observers do not know to which conditions the participants have been assigned, and they are not aware of what the study is about. That's an even better one, right? Like when you really just have no clue. So then you're really observing things as best as possible. So this is just an example here of how you could code it. What is a generally positive statement, a specific positive statement, a corrective or instructional correction, a negative statement, or a neutral statement. So that wasn't a specific study that was cited in your textbook, but if you define that ahead of time, you're ahead of the game so that when you're doing your assessment, you know how to code it. More importantly, observational data should really never be done alone, right? Like having kind of that inter-rater reliability that both people observing coded the same way, that's huge to make sure that you're actually on the right track and measuring the right thing. Okay. So reactivity, that is when participants react to being watched. That kind of circles back again to the hockey example. So it's important if you're an observer that you try to blend in as much as possible, right? You don't want to make it super obvious that you're there. Again, you know, you're observing certain behavior. You don't want to be like, right? That's a tail. No one's going to, I mean, if someone was doing that to you, you'd probably like, what is happening? Why are you here? Get out of here, right? But obviously you still need to notate. So like, one of the first, again, I'm bringing back last year because we had lots of examples that came up with that. But one was wondering about the way they reached into their wallet or paid, which really, if you're thinking like somebody's at the cash register at Starbucks, again, I'd like to say this was last year when COVID was not present. So being up in people's grill it meant something different than it does today. But, you know, somebody's getting stuff out of their wallet in front of the cash register. Nowadays, we're like 6 feet behind. So you definitely wouldn't see. But even without that, you wouldn't be standing right next to them or behind them, right? You give somebody a little bit of space. But in order to see and measure, oh, was there a question? No. Okay. In order to see or measure what that student was trying to measure and observe, he would have needed to be right there. And that would have been super uncomfortable. He would not have been blending in. It would have been awkward for the staff people. They would have asked us to leave, frankly, because it would have turned down business. So you really want to try to be as unobtrusive as possible. If you're observing somebody in a social setting or oftentimes for marriage observational studies, excuse me, you can have them be in a room and have a conversation and sit behind a two-way mirror so that they don't know you're watching them. Although most of the time now, if you see a huge mirror in the middle of a room, would you question if it's a two-way mirror, especially if you're in like a therapy office? Probably. It's probably somebody on the other side watching. It's important to just wait it out too. Like, do not hope that everything is going to just happen right away. You need to make sure that people have an opportunity to get used to you being there. Especially if you're trying to blend in and be one with them, just get them used to it, right? That's going to be a huge piece to it. That actually is not scientific at all, and I'm embarrassed now this is being recorded, but on The Bachelor or other reality shows where the cameras are right there front and center, right? And they're like, oh, this is awkward. You hear that really only the first couple weeks because then they just get used to it. It's not a big deal. Right? It almost becomes part of what the experience is like. Same with Big Brother, Survivor, all of those reality shows. It just becomes more common. So there's a slight discomfort and maybe a lack of genuine representation at the beginning. On The Bachelor, alcohol plays a role in smoothing that out. But as people get more comfortable, it becomes a non-issue. And then the third is you want to measure the behavior's results. So instead of actually just measuring the behavior, sometimes it's helpful to look at traces of the behavior, how it got impacted. So for instance, if I'm looking and trying to figure out how much of these people who are on a special diet, how much are they sticking to their diet, I can give them a survey about it. Risk of responding in a certain way are pretty high, right? Social desirability, especially if you're trying to stick to a regimen, are going to be high. And then if I just observe them eating, that's going to impact what they eat. But if I looked at a residual, like somebody's garbage, and see evidence of Freddy's, Culver's, Burger King, and they're like, nope, never eat fast food, don't know where that's coming from, you have data right there from it. So it's not as impactful as if you were just literally watching them all the time. So, okay. It is important to remember ethics when you're doing observational studies. So the question is it actually ethical for researchers to observe the behaviors of others? It's really dependent on the situation. If you are interested in public restroom behavior and you start filming people in the restroom, what do we think about that? Samantha, your face tells it all. It's a no bueno. We don't do that. No, no, no. It is an implied private space where somebody has an assumed level of privacy and confidentiality. With students back in California, we observed the behavior of how people went up and down this like really scary staircase that was on that campus that was like made of concrete and had a really wriggly rail. Anyway, we saw how did people go up and down, and we had theories as, you know, men versus women, professors versus students, how they approach the stairs. Well, is there an assumption of privacy there? No, people are walking outside. So if I'm sitting off to the side on a bench and watching them, that's probably okay, right? Same with the grocery store observation of putting their carts back. If I'm just off to the side, there's not an assumption of privacy. But if I'm looking at how soon people do their dishes after a dinner and I've got binoculars looking into their windows in the middle of the night, not cool, right? Assumption of privacy. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Also, any sort of recording devices is also no good. Like, I'm just going to place a bug. It's no big deal. Can't be doing that. That would be violating privacy. So we got to keep that in mind. Okay, here are some forms or some different sites that you guys can use to be able to create your surveys, and not create, but upload your surveys. I would highly recommend SurveyMonkey as a really good one. Have any of you guys interacted with SurveyMonkey before? Yes, some, maybe not a whole lot. It's a good one. You get to upload the questions, people answer them, it's anonymous, and then you get aggregate data at the end. Google Forms can be helpful with that too. The confidentiality piece of that one is more questionable to me because it's usually tied to an email address. So that would be something we need to look into. But for the purpose of this class, what I would like you guys to use is probably SurveyMonkey, unless there's another deployment form that you feel more comfortable with. And then we're going to be deploying it for our participants online this year. So we're not going to be doing paper and pencil surveys because most of you are not in classes on campus, and we don't want to be having people touch paper, you get it back. That's not a good idea. So these are some ways that you can recruit participants to take your survey. And then we'll talk about, again, within your groups, you'll want to each be responsible, let's say for like 20, so that as a group, you've got 80 plus responses, which I think will be helpful for that as well. Okay. Questions about the lecture tonight? That was a lot of info. No? Okay. Elise, you look like you're having fun over there. I want to laugh too. Did something crazy happen?
Sorry, I had to quick text my dad in the other room because our dog is outside. He let her out and she came around the front porch and started staring at me to be let in. I'm like, I can't let you in. I texted my dad to let her in. I'm like, hey, can you let the dog in, please? And he sends me a picture back of himself going like this.
Oh.
Nose goes thing, because that's what we do in my house.
Oh. Well, I mean, this is an interesting time we live in. I had a class earlier today and I texted my husband. I'm like, I really want a cup of tea. I am freezing in the basement. And sure enough, he comes, so this is our downstairs. He comes back and he's like, with the mug. He's got his I don't know, he's just dressed casually and on his phone. He's like, do you want it here? And I'm like, I'm talking. What are you doing? He's like, oh, and set it down, ran off. But I think we're probably getting a lot more of that, just like that viral video that went by, that guy who's pushing his kid out and the mom sweeps in, takes him out. Anyway, that one makes me laugh a lot. Oh, where did you guys all go? Hold on. All right, so I want to spend a few minutes to just talk about expectations. At this point in the game, we've talked about what surveys look like. You guys have your topics prepared. We've talked about what the literature review, at least broadly, is going to look like. So you guys need to be getting together with your groups to figure out what survey you're going to use, what platform you want to host it on, and then what will be your method of recruitment. It's a good idea if you just know of people who are going to take your survey. You've got friends that are not in this class that are fine taking it. It can be confident, especially if it's confidential. It's fine to send them the link. If you have family members on Facebook, you can send them the link to Facebook Messenger or text to them. Totally fine. We're kind of doing things a little differently this year rather than just Aquinas students. I just want to make sure that you are including certain pieces of information before you deploy the survey. That is that you are telling them it is going to remain confidential. So whatever method you have of hosting the survey needs to be confidential so that they feel a certain level of confidence in answering this without knowing that there'll be reprimand or, consequences. Second, you need to tell them that it's only for the purpose of a class, that none of the data will be published or released in any way. It's only as a learning experience of collecting data. Okay, so purpose of the class, never going to be released or published, only meant as an educational. Oh my gosh, Bridget just had the same experience. Oh, Jim Johns, sounds good. So make sure that you share that on there, that you set that expectation that you're really pre-paving from the top. Third, you need to have a way to be constantly in communication with your group members, because ultimately you're going to be sending out the data and the data will start accumulating, but you guys need to make sure you wrangle in, make sure you're capturing. If people are responding, but they're only completing half of your survey, that's going to hurt you in the end. So you guys need to be on top of that. If each of you are committing to having 20 people complete it, which that should be about the goal. If you're able to get 100 in your group, that is amazing. That I think is a lofty goal. If we could get to 20 per person, so that'd be 80. That's a more reasonable group. And if you're like, hey, I know no one here, I'm a lone wolf, I don't know very many people, I think I can only get 5, just let me know about that. Let your group members know so that as a group you can accommodate that as well. Okay, so my expectation from all of you guys is that when you will all be getting together in your groups at least once this week and once before we meet next week, so that you will have discussed what survey you need to pick, what looks good for your topic, and also start talking about how we're going to deploy that. What platform are we going to use? So before the exam next week, my hope is you'll have met twice to discuss those things. If you are not able to meet, obviously in person, I certainly am not pushing for that, meet via Zoom, call each other. I don't know what other ways. Cool kids, you guys do you. Whatever way you communicate with one another, totally fine. If you have questions, you're like, hey, we're looking at this and we have no clue where to start with our survey. Can you point me in the right direction? The answer is going to be yes. Of course I will help you. Make sure you shoot me a text and I'll help you. But here's what I'm not going to do. I am not going to be, oh, Grace, yes. Is it in, it's not news. There's an exam next week, right? I think that's on the syllabus. Sorry, I'm double checking. September 30, isn't that next week? Am I wrong? September 30 is next week, right? Yes. Yes. Yeah, sorry, Grace. I think you missed part of that chat. Okay. Review the video later tonight. Okay. So I will definitely help you guys if you need some guidance. Definitely happy to do that. I am not, however, going to, if you go, we don't know what to do, tell us the things, all of the things, do it for us. I will not be doing that, right? I will not be picking the survey and telling you this is how you put it on SurveyMonkey. I'll point you in the right direction so that you get to choose. You as a group choose which survey you want to use. And then you as a group discuss what makes the most sense for your questions, whether it's Google Forms, whether it's going to be SurveyMonkey or something else to gather your data. Okay? Does that make sense, the differentiation? Like, I want to be helpful, but I think going through this experience is something you guys need to do also on your own. So it's kind of that fine line between the two. Okay.
Should we also start looking for articles for the literature review at this point, or should we hold
Yes.
off?
Yes, very much so. Because it kind of goes in tandem, right? As you're thinking about the question that you have, you want to see what surveys are out there to measure it. Those surveys, you're going to search through it through articles. It all is together. So start accumulating it. You want to have a sense of what you think the relationship is going to be between the two. So look to the literature to see what's out there on that.
All right, follow up. Do we all need to have like the same articles to review, or
No.
is it fine if like each member has different ones?
Great question. And I want to be very clear about that. You guys should all be doing your own research. Find your own articles, write your own literature review. You're going to write your own methodology. The part that you're doing as a group is coming up with the survey and deploying the survey. And why we're doing it this way is so we can benefit from a group aspect to get greater numbers. That's really the main, reason why we're doing that.
All right, and is there like a rubric or something, or like just how you want everything to be formatted and like how many sources we need to have?
Yes. So I think if you go back to the syllabus, it outlines the fact that you'll need an introduction, you'll need methodology, and those will all be like submitted at different times and earning points, each of them on their own. And then when you get it all together before the presentation, the paper will be completed. You'll just assemble all those pieces. Yeah, but I assign a grade to each of those. So I think if you go back to the syllabus on the research paper section, let me bring this over here so I can see what I'm doing. Oops. I'm looking for it too now. Right here on page 5, it says the research paper section and drafts are worth 2.5% each. So you'll have references, the introduction, the method, and the resultant discussion. So it's broken up in pieces. Okay.
Wait, so is this a literature review or is it like a research paper? Like I'm kind of confused because for one of my classes I'm doing a literature review, but it's mostly like literature review or like saying what's in certain things and in like articles and stuff, but like you want like a methodology. So is that off of our data that we do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the answer is it's a little bit of both. So when you come up with your introduction section, you're going to be talking about articles that feed into your particular research interest. And
Yeah.
it's going to be, like I was mentioning in a couple classes ago, it has to be integrative. So you're looking at different pieces of research. How are they coming together to come up with the same conclusion and guiding you towards where your hypothesis is? At the end of your intro kind of lit review section, you're going to have your hypothesis. Then you're going to write the methodology, which is we surveyed individuals ranging from age 19 to 64, and we recruited them using Facebook Messenger, email, like that's where you're describing how you ran your study.
Okay.
And then the results, you'll talk about what you actually got. Now the results section for all of you, it's going to be based on the same data, right? We're not going to be changing the data around. It's going to be what it's going to be. But your writing about it, and then certainly your discussion, that's all going to be your own. Okay, does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I have another question too.
Yeah.
So for like, do we just do like a Google search for like the kind of survey we're doing for our project that goes with our topic?
So you could do that. I think a better way to go is when you're researching in the database on your specific topic, see what survey has been used before, and then from there, try to find that survey. And you'll either be able to find it in the databases or oftentimes it's just on Google Online.
Okay.
So I think it's a better way to go to find a survey that's been validated and used in some of your studies than to say, find a survey on personality traits and birth order, right? Because you're going to get a ton of just crap, frankly, of people who are like, well, I've discovered if you like the color red, you must be a firstborn. Yeah. Does
Okay.
that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
No, I'm still confused. So if we search, you're saying like if we search for the survey, because you're saying like to search for surveys that have been used specific to our topic.
Yes.
But you're saying like don't go to Google and be like what you just said, and that's something I'm low key I would have probably just did that. So I'm asking like how do you like go about finding a correct survey? Like
So
I don't know.
No, it's a very fair question. So when you're looking up articles about your topic, you're going to go to the databases, right? To say, what is it that they say about it? So Tarshana, what's your topic again? I know you're with Grace, right? What is the topic? Yeah. Remind me again.
I think you literally said it. It's the personalities with
Yeah,
the
it's
birth.
personality and
It is.
birth order.
Okay,
Yeah.
the fact that there's 2 Graces in this class confuses me. I always think back and forth. Okay, so if you look at the literature on birth order, right, it's going to say that there's going to be some sort of impact. Studies have shown on conglomerate of like 700 firstborn that they share these personality traits. And the way we assess those personality traits is because we gave them insert survey. We gave them a survey of the Big Five, or we gave them insert whatever the survey is in those articles that they gave. And then they're going to tell you what the results were. And we found in those surveys that firstborn were more likely to be organized and leaders, whereas babies in the family were more likely to be whiny and complaining. See, I'm a firstborn, so I'm going to just dog on the baby borns. Whatever it is, they are going to describe to you the survey results based on the survey they actually gave. I would research that exact survey. If you're able to get your hands on that, use that same survey for your study. So now you may find 10 articles that talk about personality styles and birth order, and maybe in those 10, you'll find 5 surveys that they use. They're all kind of different. Try to find all 5 of those and see which one is best for your study. The reason why I say don't go straight to Google and say, find me a survey that assesses personality is you're going to get some non-empirically supported surveys on there. Surveys that John next door decided that he had a theory because one time, right? Remember when we looked at the start of the class about people with authority versus empirical study? Like we want to try to stay as empirical as possible. So that's why I would start with the databases. What do past studies tell you that they've used in terms of surveys? Then search that survey, get your hands on that. Now, sometimes studies, they will have given a survey that's like 400 questions. Do not torture your participants and do that. Don't do it. Instead, find one that's a reasonable format. Was that clearer, better, Tarshana? I want to make sure I'm okay.
So we're using other people's studies? Like other people's surveys?
Yes, yes. You are not creating your own survey. Like I said, you can add some questions about demographic, like male, female, what age group, marital status. Like it's fine to add those kinds of questions, but it is far beyond this course for you guys to design your own study.
What is a reasonable number of questions?
That's a good question. I think less than 50. Definitely less. I mean, just think again, imagine you received a request from somebody you knew to take a survey. Like, how long would it be before you'd be like, not doing that. Nobody's got time to do that right now. So that's not a very good answer, Jasmine. I would just say it depends. Yeah, see what's out there. again, I would aim or lean more towards not very long. But again, if your survey is gonna have 5 questions, that goes back to like another slide that was there tonight. It's not gonna be very thorough either, right? How well is it assessing?
I mean, I get there's not a lot of questions, but like, honestly, I wouldn't do more than 10 to 20 questions. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, that's
Did I
totally
get enough
fine.
data from that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for your honesty too. I'm like, I don't know, 50? What does that take? 20 minutes? But yeah. Okay. So you are tasked this evening to get together with your group members. If you are struggling to get in contact with them, or you feel like, hey, we've got an absentee team member, please do let me know. This is made to be fair. Having said that, I'm not going to have you guys go, now tell me, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was your partner's, I just want us to be grown-ups about it and be helpful and earn your own grade, right? We can do that. But if there's somebody that's completely absent, you cannot get a hold of them, please leverage me so that I can help you. Okay. Excuse me. Oh, I thought I could hold it. All right, if any more questions pop up, please do text me, email me, whatever you need to do. Again, make sure you come on the Zoom meeting before the test tomorrow. We'll start the class together. Review this video, it'll be on YouTube. As soon as this class is done, I'm gonna make sure to convert it and put it right on our channel. Sound good? All right, team, have a great rest of your night. Enjoy that Jimmy John's, Bridget. Talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.